Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Jesse Santiago from drjessesantiago.com. I'm a medical doctor, an internist, and an emergency room physician for more than 3 decades now. Today I will talk to you about one of the most read articles in my website. And that's the Pfizer adverse events of special interest. What makes them special? What does adverse event of special interest mean? First of all, the medical conditions in the list does not mean that the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine causes all of those. That's because we don't have enough data to make that conclusion, at least not yet. Adverse events of special interest is from the Council for International Organizations of Medical Sciences, or CIOMS. There's a book about it called the Development Safety Update Report, where I found the definition of adverse event of special interest. Long story short, CIOMS tells the vaccine and drug companies to watch out for adverse events during the clinical trials and after the product rolls out. That way, they could compare the number of those adverse events among the vaccinated and unvaccinated. The reason for that is if there are more adverse events in the vaccinated group than the unvax, then it becomes a safety issue. AESIs are also applicable to medications. That is how they know which drugs to pull out of the market.
AESIs apply to all COVID-19 vaccines, not just the Pfizer. So it also applies to Moderna, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Sputnik, Sinopharm, Sinovac, and Convidecia. And if you're listening outside the US and you got a different vaccine, you should also report the adverse event if that happens to you. This map is from Wikipedia and color codes the vaccines used for each country. Some countries are multicolored, which means more than one brand of the vaccines are used. It is not only the CIOMS who says that adverse events of special interest should be reported, but also by the World Health Organization. They publish it in their manual for COVID-19 vaccines, the Safety Surveillance Manual. This is taken from the WHO Surveillance Manual. AEFIs means adverse events following COVID immunization. Ideally, the adverse events in the vaccinated should not be greater than the unvaccinated. Then they will compare it to the control group, which is the unvaccinated population. And that is why Pfizer has included a list of adverse events of special interest in their document, Cumulative Analysis of Post-Authorization Adverse Event. That Pfizer report is about the people who had the vaccine complications after the emergency use authorization release. The AESIs were included in the appendix to guide the investigators. You can download the Pfizer document from the Public Health and Medical Professionals for Transparency, which is the group that sued so that the FDA will release those documents. The link is in my article about the AESI and in the description below.
Let's go to the adverse events of special interest. All of them need to be reported. There are 1,289 diseases. I will not talk about them individually, but I classified them to the following. Some are just plain symptoms like headache or loss of taste, which are also important. Congenital chromosome problems. Vaccinated mothers should report this if they later have a baby with a chromosome problem. If a genetic problem happens after the vaccination, like an acquired C1 inhibitor deficiency, it should be reported too. There are many autoimmune diseases in the list, which is not surprising since vaccination alters the immune system. Even common diseases like pneumonia, heart attacks, strokes, and infection after the vaccination should be reported. That way, the underlying cause can be further investigated. All problems in pregnancy, like spontaneous abortion, infection, miscarriages, and stillbirth, should be reported. COVID-19, especially hospitalized cases, medical device complications like stent thrombosis, which is an indication of hypercoagulability or increased tendency to develop a blood clot, and even if the condition is not on the list. I saw an article about a person who had pheochromocytoma after his shot. However, that illness, which causes a life-threatening hypertension, is not on the list of adverse events of special interest.
Reporting works, and I will show you two examples. First, recently the Food and Drug Administration limited the use of the Johnson & Johnson shots to those 18 years and older because of thrombotic thrombocytic purpura, or TTP. TTP is actually included in the AESI list, but it is buried in a sea of words. But I fixed that from hard to read to easy to read in my website. Why did they limit the J&J shot because of the TTP? What is TTP? Well, TTP is supposed to be a rare, life-threatening blood disorder where blood clots form in small blood vessels throughout the body. I think the shots made them more common. If the clot is in the artery that goes to the brain, you get a stroke. If the clot is in the heart, you get a heart attack, and in the kidneys, acute renal failure. It can happen to any age group, even though you don't have any of the usual cardiovascular risk factor. I suspect that the TTP also happens in the older age group. There is no biological reason why not. However, if they are not reported in the older age group because of normalcy bias, then there won't be an increase in the number of cases reported. Here is another proof that reporting works. This is the CDC webpage that acknowledges that mRNA vaccines like the Pfizer and Moderna can cause myocarditis and pericarditis among teenagers and young adults. Pfizer, Moderna, and the CDC now has a warning about myocarditis and pericarditis among males under 40. Reporting adverse events is all about safety. Vaccines are given to healthy people. At the minimum, they should not cause disease or kill people. If they find that there are more people or a particular age group who get a specific condition after they get the shot, then they might limit the use of that vaccine or drug, or even pull it out of the market. The message and bottom line here is that if you develop any medical condition that occurs after the COVID shots, it should be reported. Report any medical condition after the COVID shots, no matter how common or rare. Ask for a diagnosis, especially if the symptoms are persistent. You may need a referral to a specialist or undergo more testing. An accurate diagnosis is necessary for the right treatment. Nobody can show you proof that it is only a coincidence. No one has solid data that says that these conditions are just coincidence until reporting is done. The law requires healthcare professionals to report adverse events. However, they may not have the time to do it because usually they are swamped with their usual work. So it may be up to you to do it, and I will show you how and where to report. Serious adverse events should all be reported. FDA defines serious adverse events as death, life-threatening adverse event, inpatient hospitalization. Nowadays, you only get hospitalized in the US if you have a life-threatening condition. The other one is persistent or significant incapacitation. Any condition that limits life or work functions, any pregnancy problem, any congenital anomaly or birth defect that happens to the child of the mother who got vaccinated, or a medical event that requires medications or surgery. Cases of multisystem inflammatory syndrome, cases of COVID-19 that results in hospitalization or death. Actually, the list says COVID-19. How many vaccinated people do you know got COVID-19 afterwards? I know 10 at least. Where do you report the adverse events? The Food and Drug Administration has MedWatch. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has VIRES. Pfizer has its own website where you can report any Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine adverse reaction. I provided the links to those websites below. These are the information you need to gather before you make the report. You can go to my article or just hit the pause button in this video and write it down. Yes, it looks like a lot of work, but it will pay off because if you had a bad reaction with the shots, reporting it may lead to the FDA or the CDC to change their rules about making them mandatory for everyone. The reason why so much information is needed because the FDA or the CDC will narrow down the adverse event to a particular lot number, age group, gender, or those with medical conditions. Here are some tips on how to report. Put all the information in a word processing software like WPS, and then copy and paste them once complete. Sometimes you may have to do something else in the middle of putting it in the report, and the VAERS will time out and you will lose all your work. Be sure to follow up on it because I heard reports that thousands get deleted. The take-home message in this video is this. Adverse events of special interest include common and rare diseases. We have to find out if these adverse events happen more in the vaccinated than in the unvaccinated group. It is not only a matter of safety but also life and death. Those medical conditions can happen days, weeks, or months after. Cardiac arrest and its cause should be reported. If the relatives of the disease will report all the deaths post-vaccination, that will provide proof for the excess deaths for 2021. I do have many articles about excess deaths and autopsy on the website drjessesantiana.com. Who benefits from reporting? If we can show that these shots do more harm than good, then you help the whole humanity. Those include your friends, family, and loved ones. And that includes that special person in your life, yourself. I hope you learned something today. Click like, subscribe, and share this video. I will end this video like in my articles. Truth heals, lies kill. Don't get sick.